Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Nicholas Kassotis. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Nicholas James Kassotis was born in 1982 and raised in Fitzwilliam, New Hampshire. He went by the name Nick. In 2004, he earned a bachelor's degree, then went on to earn his JD. By 2008, he was a naval officer working in Virginia. Nick worked as a Judge Advocate General, otherwise known as a JAG. Essentially, he was a lawyer who works for the Navy. In September 2009, he married a woman named Heather. Over the next few years, Nick spent time deployed overseas, including in Italy. He then worked in the Pentagon. Eventually, he earned an LLM, which is a Master of Laws. This is a postgraduate degree earned by lawyers who already have a JD. In October 2015, Nick and his wife Heather divorced. He was ordered by the court to pay a $1.5 million judgment, but Nick never did. After leaving the Navy in 2017, Nick worked as a civilian for the Department of the Navy. In October 2016, Nick married a woman named Mindy. Initially, the couple lived in Alexandria, Virginia, but then they moved around quite a bit. Ultimately, they ended up in Savannah, Georgia, living in an Airbnb at 311 East 65th Street. Mindy's parents lived in the same house with the couple. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. In September 2022, Nick began exchanging emails with a woman named Samantha. The couple became romantically involved, but Samantha did not know that Nick was married. Nick told Samantha that his wife had died 2 years earlier. On December 1, 2022, Nick told his family members that Mindy had died from a stroke while in the hospital. On the next day, December 2, at 4:15 p.m., hunters found a woman's torso at the Portal Hunting Club in Townsend, Georgia, and contacted the police. This is about an hour south of Savannah. When the police arrived, they discovered a knife and 2 plastic storage containers near the woman's torso. They also found other body parts from the woman within a 3-mile radius. The police believe the remains had been placed there sometime between November 27 and November 30, 2022. Investigators did not know the identity of the woman. They described her as white, 5'9", and 200 pounds. She did not have any scars, marks, or tattoos. 15 days after telling Mindy's parents that she was dead, Nick traveled to Pennsylvania to meet with his lover, Samantha. He told her that he was working on a merger in Missouri and his company was going to move him to Delaware. In April 2023, Nick and Samantha married. On May 11 of that year, the body of the murdered woman was identified using genetic genealogy. The body belonged to Mindy Kassotis. Her cause of death was ruled as traumatic injury. One day after Mindy's body was identified, Nick Kassotis was arrested in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. During an interview with the police, Nick repeated his claim that his wife Mindy died from a stroke. Nick was charged with malice murder, as well as 11 other offenses. His trial started on August 5, 2025. Nick testified on his own behalf for quite a while. Here is what he said happened. Sometime in 2017, Mindy noticed strange activity with the couple's bank accounts. Later, the couple's mail went missing and they were victims of vandalism. For example, there was a broken window and nails were found in vehicle tires. Nick believed that he and his wife were being targeted because his name had appeared in a Washington Post article published on September 1, 2016. I read the article. It was about a major in the Marines who allegedly sent information over an unclassified email server to warn his fellow soldiers about a corrupt Afghan police chief. Lieutenant Commander Nicholas Kassotis was mentioned in one paragraph, indicating that he supported the recommendation of the Marine Corps that the major be discharged. There was nothing negative or dramatic about Nick in the article. Despite this, Nick really latched on to the idea that he was being targeted. Based on this, he did not go to the local police, believing they would be ineffective. Rather, he reported the strange occurrences to the FBI. Nick said that an FBI agent named Jim McIntyre stopped by to speak with him. He believed that Jim was trying to get to the bottom of the banking problems, the missing mail, and the vandalism. In February 2018, Nick left his civilian job in the Navy and started working remotely for a software company that was developing AI technology. This job was arranged by the FBI agent, Jim McIntyre. Over time, Jim started telling Nick and Mindy that they were in danger and needed to hide from the mysterious people persecuting them. This led to the couple moving several times. In October 2019, Nick and Mindy moved near Charlottesville, Virginia. Nick said that he was attacked from behind while there, which only led him to be more frightened. In late 2019, the couple moved to Hilton Head, South Carolina. Over the next few months, they moved 15 to 20 times in that area before leaving Hilton Head in May 2020. After living in North Carolina for several months, they moved back to Hilton Head, South Carolina. This time, they lived with Mindy's brother. He evicted them in June 2022. This is when Nick, Mindy, and Mindy's parents ended up in the Airbnb in Savannah, Georgia. According to Nick, throughout this bizarre moving adventure, the mysterious FBI agent Jim McIntyre had complete control over his life. Jim had access to Nick's bank accounts, his home, his social media accounts, and a Signal messaging app that Nick used to communicate with Mindy. Nick didn't even know how much he had in his bank accounts because Jim handled everything. He found them housing and even signed them up for Medicaid. He was more than just an FBI agent. He was a personal secretary. Eventually, Nick learned that Jim was not really an FBI agent. Rather, he was the majority investor in the software company that employed Nick. This did not end Nick's relationship with Jim, but Nick tried to set some boundaries. Jim's high level of control meant that Nick had to find other sources of money. Nick charged $198,000 on a friend's credit card and claimed that he sold a short story to Sony Pictures for $300,000. It was some type of horror story, probably only marginally scarier than his testimony in court. Nick claimed that before Mindy's death, she led him to believe that she was pregnant. On Thanksgiving weekend in 2022, Mindy sent a message to Nick indicating that she was going to a hospital to seek medical attention. When Nick returned home, Mindy was gone. On December 1, 2022, a mysterious man from a medical clinic called Nick and told him that Mindy was dead. Another mysterious individual had Nick deliver items in bins to a house in Liberty County. Some of Mindy's body parts were found in this county. After Mindy's death, Nick moved around quite a bit. He ended up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with his lover, Samantha. Again, he married her not long after this. The jury was not impressed with Nick's fantastical story about a mythical FBI agent controlling his life. On August 14, 2025, Nick Kassotis was found guilty of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing death, possession of a knife during a felony, removal of body parts from the scene of a crime, tampering with evidence, and 5 counts of possession of a tool during a crime. When the verdict was being read, Nick appeared to be suffering from some type of tic involving his face. Perhaps this was stress-related. Nick's sentence was a term of life in prison without the possibility of parole, and 25 years to be served consecutively. Now moving to my analysis. Nick Kassotis maintains his innocence, and, unbelievably, he has a few supporters, including family members. They argue that Nick is a kind and gentle man, and he could not have committed the murder. The state of Georgia, of course, disagrees. They argue that the evidence against Nick may be circumstantial, but it is overwhelming. This brings me to the question, is Nick guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he is guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. In September 2022, Nick started having an affair. He did not tell his lover that he was married. On August 16, 2022, Nick purchased Clorox wipes, latex gloves, and folding razors at a Home Depot. On November 4 of that year, Nick purchased a shovel and a hammer. On November 28, he purchased a 7-piece knife set from Bass Pro Shop. And on the next day, November 29, Nick bought a knife at a Home Depot that looked a lot like the one that was found near Mindy's torso. That same day, Nick deactivated his phone for 2 hours during the morning. Cell phone data placed him in the area where Mindy's remains were found. And a Ford Explorer, just like one owned by Nick, was captured on video on a road to the hunting club. During Nick's time on the stand, he admitted that he was in that area, although he claimed he had been sent there to drop off plastic storage containers. In the house that Nick rented, a small amount of Mindy's blood was found on a futon. Nick told Mindy's parents that she died from a stroke on December 1 at a hospital 1 day before her body was discovered. So Nick declared her to be dead before anyone should have known. The landlord of the house that Nick rented said that after Nick moved out, she noticed that a rug in the den was missing and had been replaced by a cheaper version bearing a similar pattern. Right after Mindy's death, Nick traveled to Pennsylvania to meet with his lover Samantha. Not long before he married Samantha, Nick's Ford Explorer mysteriously caught on fire. He claimed that a cashier's check, which was going to be used to purchase a house, was destroyed in this fire. Nick's fantastical story about Jim McIntyre, the fake FBI agent and software company investor, is impossible to believe. Nick would have people believe that he worked for years for this software company but never received a paycheck. It seems clear that Jim McIntyre does not exist and that Nick fabricated him to explain his criminal behavior. Now moving to the exculpatory factors. The state could not prove that the knife found near Mindy's body was used to kill or dismember her. It may have been unrelated to the crime. That's pretty much it for the exculpatory factors. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Nick is guilty? Yes, he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Some cases are challenging as far as determining guilt. This is not one of those cases. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. For some reason, Nick told Mindy that they were being persecuted by mysterious evildoers. Maybe Nick believed this, like he was delusional, or perhaps this was just a way of controlling Mindy. It's possible that both could be true at the same time. If I had to guess, I would say that Nick was not delusional. Rather, he was self-centered, excitement-seeking, manipulative, arrogant, cold, callous, impulsive, irresponsible, had a sense of entitlement, and was exceedingly creepy. Nick wanted to avoid that $1.5 million judgment from his divorce, so he went on the run. He wasn't trying to hide from stealthy conspirators, rather from the court. To get Mindy on board, he made up this whole story about being targeted based on a brief appearance in an obscure article in the Washington Post. The state of Georgia believes that Nick may have murdered Mindy because he found out she was not actually pregnant. Like Nick really wanted a child, and this was a disappointment to him. Anything's possible, but that would be a very unusual motive for a case like this. I think it is more likely that Nick killed Mindy because he wanted to be with his new lover, Samantha. This is a motive that has surfaced in hundreds of cases that I have covered. Nick needed Mindy to be out of the way so he could have someone else. He could have divorced Mindy, but Nick had already been burned to the tune of $1.5 million in a divorce. He did not want to revisit that nightmare. This time he was going to use all his incredible talents as a lawyer to solve the problem more efficiently and directly. Both before and after the murder that he committed, Nick did a terrible job at hiding the evidence. He hoped to conceal more, but he wasn't too worried about it. His defense was primarily based on the strength of his fantastical tale about Jim McIntyre. This was his ace in the hole. He truly believed that his detailed and passionately delivered story would be intriguing and irresistible, especially considering how Nick had a lot of credibility through his former job as a JAG. Sure, there was a lot of evidence against him, but he had an explanation for everything. Nick had it covered. No worries. Jim McIntyre was the one who was responsible for all these evil deeds. Nick believed that he would get on the stand, dazzle everybody with his impressive education and work history, and the jury would be mesmerized by this ridiculous cloak and dagger narrative. They would not only acquit him, they would feel sorry for him. Nick was repeatedly harassed by evildoers and betrayed by Jim McIntyre. The real victim here was Nick. As it turns out, that's not what happened. The jury completely rejected Nick's nonsensical story. Either the jury was correct, or Jim McIntyre is out there somewhere laughing hysterically. Those are my thoughts on the case of Nicholas Kassotis. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.